Hello everyone. We are going to start with scrub typhus, which belongs to rickettsial zoonosis.
Rickettsial zoonosis. These diseases we can call as rickettsial diseases or rickettsial infections or rickettsiosis. Most of the rickettsial diseases are zoonoses. And what it includes? Rickettsial zoonosis, it includes group of certain diseases which are communicable. That means they are transmitted to humans. This transmission, it occurs mainly through arthropod vectors, and the causative organisms are obviously these are rickettsial organisms. So these are rickettsial organisms which are transmitted to man, and these are transmitted by arthropod vectors. How the cycle of these rickettsial infections, it is maintained in nature. In nature, the cycle of rickettsial zoonosis or cycle of rickettsial infections, it is mainly maintained by insect vectors, and it is mainly maintained by animal reservoirs. But whatever infections or whatever diseases of rickettsial origin that occurs in human beings, it is not part of this cycle of rickettsial diseases. So same thing, in other words, we can say in majority of cases humans are accidentally involved, or whenever human will have contacts with these infected vectors or with the reservoirs, they may acquire infection. And the conditions that can favor transmission, it mainly includes overcrowding, and second important part it includes is poor personal hygiene. These rickettsia organisms which stand in between bacteria and viruses. Now, why we are saying they stand between bacteria and viruses? Because they show some features of bacteria and some features of viruses. So, important feature related to virus is they are obligate intracellular organisms. Then related to bacteria, we said they contains DNA, RNA, as well as they contain some enzymes. In their cell wall, peptidoglycan is present. So, like these features which are similar to bacteria, they stand in between viruses and bacteria. And regarding its discovery, it's H.T. Ricketts who discovered these rickettsia organisms. And most important thing regarding rickettsia organisms you should not forget is they are transmitted by blood-sucking arthropod vectors. Four important vectors are there. One is louse or lice, it's flea or fleas, it's tick or ticks, and it's mite or mites. These rickettsial diseases, they are divided into three groups. Typhus group is first group, second group is spotted fever group, and third group it includes other rickettsial diseases. Whatever names I am telling you, few are included in your syllabus, but let us have a look on the names of all diseases. In typhus group, all three diseases is part of your syllabus. It includes epidemic typhus. What is its vector? Yes, it's louse. So vector for transmission of epidemic typhus is louse, and the rickettsial agent is Rickettsia prowazekii. Second disease which is included in typhus group, it includes marine typhus. Third is scrub typhus. Now scrub typhus is our today's topic, but before going into details of this disease, let's finish these three groups first. In first group, only three names are there: epidemic typhus, marine typhus, and scrub typhus. Second group, that is spotted fever group. Even if you can recall, we said rickettsial organisms are divided into two: typhus group and spotted fever group. So whatever organisms that are included in spotted fever group, they are responsible for causing rickettsial diseases, which are grouped as spotted fever group. It includes Indian tick typhus. It includes African tick bite fever, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, then flea-borne spotted fever, and rickettsial pox. Third group is other rickettsial diseases. Other rickettsial diseases, it mainly includes Q fever and trench fever. Rickettsial organisms, they are transmitted by blood-sucking arthropod vectors, and these vectors may include either louse, flea, tick, or mite. But only exception, whatever diseases we discussed right now or I enlisted right now, Q fever. So Q fever is the disease which is not transmitted by arthropod vectors or blood-sucking vectors. So this is not transmitted by louse, flea, tick, or mite. And scrub typhus is transmitted by vector. It is arthropod vector, it is blood-sucking vector, and the vector is mite. Name of vector, right now you know, name of vector is mite. Mite can also be called as chiggers. So mites or chiggers are the vectors for transmission of scrub typhus. What mites includes or what chiggers includes? Now, as far as public health is concerned, so from this aspect, there are two important types of mites. So one is trombiculid mite and second is itch mite. Mites, they are playing important role in transmission of rickettsial organisms. And in the rickettsial organisms, the mite which will play major role is trombiculid mite. And this trombiculid mite, further there are two important species which we can find in India and even in other countries also. It is Leptotrombidium diliens and Leptotrombidium akamushi. I repeat once again, Leptotrombidium diliens and Leptotrombidium akamushi. So, have you seen spiders? I think all of you. These mites are the arthropods or the insect vectors which have appearance like that of spider. They have total 4 pairs of legs. Their body do not have well demarcation into different parts like head, thorax and abdomen. Well demarcation of these body parts is not seen. Regarding their life history or life cycle, in life cycle of trombiculid mite, there are 4 important stages. First stage, it is egg. Second stage is larva. Third stage is nymph. And fourth stage is adult. Trombiculid mite lay eggs singly and they require period of 1 week for hatching. So within period of 1 week, eggs hatch into larvae. Larvae, they are very small in size. Their color is pale orange and they have only 3 pairs of legs at this stage. So larval stage of trombiculid mite has 3 pairs of legs, and most important feature of larvae, they feed on vertebrate host, and vertebrate host for larvae of trombiculid mite, it includes rodents or humans. Total duration of this stage is about 1 to 2 weeks. In larval stage, trombiculid mite, it remains for 1 to 2 weeks. Next, it enters into the next stage, which is known as nymph. Now you can find change in color. So larval stage has pale orange color. This color changes to brick red, and also number of pairs of legs, they also changes. In larval stage, we said 3 pairs of legs. Here you can find 4 pairs of legs. Two important differences. One is a change in color from pale orange to brick red, and second is change in number of pairs of legs. Larval stage 3 pairs, whereas nymphal stage 4 pairs. One more difference to notice between larval stage and nymph stage is feeding. So nymphs, they feed on vegetable juices. Regarding larvae, we said they feed on vertebrate host. Vertebrate host can be rodents or can be humans. Duration of nymphal stage is a little bit greater than that of larval stage. It is 1 to 3 weeks. Last stage in the life of trombiculid mite is adult stage. So adult stage, 4 pairs of legs remains as it is, but first one is largest, and majority of times in soil we can find adult males, and entire lifespan of mite is about 6 months. When we want to control rickettsial diseases which are transmitted by trombiculid mite, it is very important to control these mites. For control, we can have 3 criteria. So one criteria is use of insecticide, which is called as insecticidal control. Second is environmental control, and third is personal protection, or we can say protection of those workers or those high risk people who are likely to have exposure to mites. In insecticidal control, we can use DDT, we can use chlordane, lindane, deldrine, malathion. So these are all names of insecticides that can be used for control of trombiculid mite. What is the dose of insecticides that should be used? So it is about 450 grams to 900 grams per acre. Acre is land area. This is applied to land, and the method of application, it can be either dusting. These insecticides can be dusted over the soil, or it may include spraying activity. In environmental control, where we should have to pay attention, obviously for controlling rickettsial diseases, attention should be paid to rodents, as many times diseases are transmitted from rodents. And regarding rodent control, we can use traps, or we can use rodenticides. Most commonly used rodenticide is zinc phosphide. Third important thing which is related with humans, what humans can do is personal protection. Personal protection, it includes mainly use of repellent. These repellents which are used, it includes diethyl toluamide. Diethyl toluamide is most commonly used repellent. In addition to it, benzyl benzoate can also be used. This is about control of mites. Regarding mites, these are trombiculid mites which are playing important role in transmission of scrub typhus. Then we said there are two important species. One is Leptotrombidium diliens and Leptotrombidium akamoshi. Then four different stages in their life cycle, but regarding their feeding habit, which is important in disease transmission, what you should know is these are only larvae or larval stage of mite which feeds on their host, or these are blood sucking, and other stages they are surviving on vegetable juices. Nymph stage and adult stage won't play any role in transmission of rickettsial organisms. Scrub typhus, it is rickettsial zoonotic disease, and it is seen in man. How man acquires this disease? Important arthropod vector which is involved in transmission is trombicular mite or chiggers. Mites are also called as chiggers. And causative agent is rickettsial agent, Rickettsia orientalis. Rickettsia orientalis is old name or previous name which is not used commonly nowadays, but still some authors they have mentioned it as Rickettsia orientalis, or it is Orienta susugamushi. There should not be any confusion whenever we say scrub typhus. These are various names of the same agent. So you may call it as Orienta susugamushi or Rickettsia susugamushi or Rickettsia orientalis. Regarding its vector, arthropod vector, trombiculid mite, also known as chigger, scrub typhus, is transmitted by bites of infected trombiculid mite larvae. We have seen mites and we said that nymph stage, adult stage, they do not feed on host. So it is only larval stage which is important. Scrub typhus, this is rickettsial zoonosis caused by Orienta susugamushi or Rickettsia susugamushi or Rickettsia orientalis, and transmitted by bites of infected trombiculid mite larvae. Diliensis is the species which we can find in India, and Akamushi is the species which is mainly found in Japan. Naturally, this infection it is seen in certain species of trombiculid mite, and these mites can transmit this infection to mainly to field mice or to rats or to rodents. What is the possibility how human can acquire this infection? So what is meaning of mite islands? It is the soil, and in this soil the micro ecosystem which is present is favorable for the growth of mites. In such soils these mites inhabits, and this is known as mite islands. Okay, so what we can find mites islands is nothing but the soil where we can find presence of these mites or inhabitation of these mites, which is called as mite islands. And so whenever human they trespass or they pass from such areas, possibility is there that they can acquire infection. Sometimes these mites, they are also present on grass, so when people comes in contact with grass, that time also infection can also be acquired. Problem statement: what distribution pattern we can see of scrub typhus? Scrub typhus, it is seen in endemic pattern in India. So in India, its epidemiological distribution pattern is endemic. Along with India, there are other regions where we can find it in endemic pattern. It is Sri Lanka, China, it's Japan. Basically from Japan, it's northern part of Japan, Southeast Asia, South Central Russia, Eastern Australia, and Western Pacific Islands. From these areas, India, Japan, Sri Lanka, China are the few names that you can easily recall. How many cases are reported? Annual cases, they are more than 1 million. More than 1 million cases of scrub typhus occurs every year, and most of the cases, they are acquired during travel. So whenever travelers will travel through endemic areas, possibility of acquiring scrub typhus increases. And basically in endemic countries, the disease is mainly found in rural areas, and there are certain activities during which infection is likely to acquired. This is camping, this is rafting, and this is hiking. So certain activities are there which increases possibility of acquiring infection. Epidemiological determinants: agent is Rickettsia sussugamushi, and other names also. So it can be called as Rickettsia orientalis, or it can be called as Orienta sussugamushi. But Rickettsia sussugamushi is the name which is used by KPAC, so we will go with this name. What is meaning of sussugamushi? If we divide it into two parts, one is sussuga and second is mushi. So mushi is mite. Meaning of mushi is mite, and sussuga is dangerous. So sussugamushi is nothing but dangerous mite. This is a dangerous mite which transmits rickettsial organisms. What is the reservoir of infection for scrub typhus? For scrub typhus, important reservoir is trombiculid mite. And in trombiculid mite, there are two species, out of which one we can find commonly in India, that is Leptotrombidium deliens, and second one is Leptotrombidium akamushi. Leptotrombidium akamushi is mainly found in Japan, whereas Leptotrombidium deliens, it is mainly found in India. Most important thing about these mites, what we can find in these mites is trans-ovarian infection. So trans-ovarian infection is maintained in trombiculid mite. What is meaning of this? All those mites which are carrying this agent, that is Rickettsia sussugamushi, this agent is transmitted from one generation of mite to their next generation. This is known as trans-ovarian transmission. Another important thing regarding trombiculid mite, as already we have discussed it, nymphal stage, adult stage, they do not feed on vertebrate host, or they do not feed on mammals. So it is only larval stage, or it is only chiggers that feed on vertebrate host, and common vertebrate host for this chigger is rodents or rats and mice. These are only chiggers or these are only larvae which may transmit these Rickettsia susugamushi from rodents to rodents most commonly, but accidentally to humans. Let's see mode of transmission. How scrub typhus is acquired? Mode of transmission is by bite of trombiculid mite larvae or chiggers. And these are those larvae which are infected by Rickettsia susugamushi. So they are carrying these organisms in their body. And what is the transmission cycle? Common transmission cycle. Cycle always starts from reservoir. And what we said reservoir for scrub typhus? It is trombiculid mite. So first chain will start from mite. Now from mites transmits infection commonly to, we said, rodents. First chain is mite. From mite, rickettsial organisms are transmitted to rodents, that is rats and mice. From rats and mice, infection may be transmitted to mite, and again from mite to rodents. So it's very simple, make it very simple. MR, I will say. So that is mites to rodents, to mites, and again to rodents. Sometimes human will acquire or they may acquire infection accidentally from mites, from trombiculid mite. And the most important thing, those persons who are suffering from scrub typhus, can they transmit infection to human? Simply whether human to human or man to man transmission can be seen in scrub typhus. No, there is no man to man transmission. So whatever cases of scrub typhus they are occurring, and we said they are more than 1 million every year. So they are acquired by bite of trombiculid mite larvae. No human to human transmission is seen in scrub typhus. What is the seasonal basis of scrub typhus? What things can give us clue regarding occurrence of cases is just we should have to see emergence of larvae. So if there are more larvae present in surrounding, it is suggestive that cases of scrub typhus can occur. And regarding some environmental factors that are related with the development and survival of these vectors, it is temperature. So temperature, if it is below 16 degrees Celsius, these mites are not able to develop, and they almost die below 6 degrees Celsius. So below 16 their development will get arrested, and below 6 degrees Celsius they will die. And upper limit you can say it is 42 degrees Celsius. So above 42 degrees Celsius they won't be able to survive. But between these range we can find appropriate growth and appropriate survival or completion of entire lifespan of these mites. Let's see what are various clinical features related with scrub typhus. Incubation period is about 10 to 12 days. It may range from 6 to 21 days. So basically it is seen in those people who are having high risk of exposure to areas where mite islands are present or where these mites are present. Regarding onset of disease, it is sudden. There is fever which is associated with chills. Here one important thing which is similar to typhoid fever, if these cases are not treated, fever may persist for 3 weeks, and after 3 weeks it will start declining. So similar thing we discussed for typhoid fever. In first week fever rises, then it remains stable, and after third to fourth week it starts declining. So somewhat similar picture you can find in scrub typhus also. And along with fevers, chills, some patients may have shaking chills also, like that of Riger, which is similar to malaria picture. Other associated symptoms, it includes headache, myalgia, malaise, prostration, and another important thing is lymph nodes, which are enlarged, tender, and painful. Initially, there is a regional lymphadenopathy, but later on, there is generalized lymphadenopathy. Again, if you can recall what I said in the beginning, rickettsial organisms, they proliferate in vascular endothelium, and except Q fever, you can get rash in all types of rickettsial diseases. So even in scrub typhus, you can see rash, and this is macular rash which appears on fifth day of illness. Now, another important manifestation which can help you a lot in clinical diagnosis of scrub typhus is eschar. Eschar is what? It is seen at the site where larvae has taken bite, or where there is bite site. Okay, so at the site of larval bite, we can find eschar. What is eschar? It is punched out ulcer, and it is covered with scab, and this scab has black colored. So black colored scab you can find, and you can see punched out ulcer, and this is suggestive that this is the site where larvae has bitten. Okay, now what are common site we can see? Commonest site for bite, it includes ankle, then it includes neck portion or even axilla also, and back of knees. So these are the few areas. If you observe these areas and if you find eschar, this is suggestive of scrub typhus. This disease may show involvement of vital organs, and sometimes neurological manifestations may occur, and severe cases may also develop septic shock. Plus, we can find a relapse in majority of cases. Now let us see what are various complications that are associated with scrub typhus. Now clinical picture, it is again similar to majority of diseases. So we said it's fever with chills, shaking chills, headache, myalgia, malaise, prostrations, regional lymphadenopathy followed by generalized lymphadenopathy, presence of macular rash which appears generally on fifth day of illness, presence of eschar at the site of bite, and depending on severity there can be septic shock, or there can be neurological manifestations also. Complications, commonest complication which is seen is atypical pneumonia, so where there can be acute respiratory distress syndrome like presentation, or few cases may develop encephalopathy, renal failure, or myocarditis, or even disseminated intravascular coagulation and multiple organ dysfunction syndrome. So complications are common, and as we say, these severe life-threatening complications can occur. So case fatality rate is definitely high, and it may be up to 30%. So up to 30% case fatality rate we can find in scrub typhus. Let's see 2-3 definitions to which case we can call it as suspected case of scrub typhus or clinical case of scrub typhus. It mainly includes acute undifferentiated febrile illness duration of illness should be 5 days minimum or more, and there may be presence of Ishar or may not be. So with or without Ishar. This is suspected case. So duration of illness is 5 days. What type of illness? It is undifferentiated febrile illness and presence or absence of Ishar. So second criteria is fever less than 5 days but presence of Ishar. So लेस देन 5 डेज की फीवर की हिस्ट्री है लेकिन उसके साथ ही एशआर प्रेजेंट है. ओके, एंड अदर फीचर्स मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट बीइंग lymphadenopathy. This is the stage which should be differentiated from other conditions like dengue, malaria, pneumonia, leptospirosis, typhoid fever. These all will come as a part of differential diagnosis for suspected case of scrub typhus. What is probable case? Whenever a suspected clinical case, it shows titer of 180 on Will-Felix test. So most important test is Will-Felix test. We'll see its lab diagnosis. So 1:80 titer is suggestive of probable case. And confirmed case, to which case we will call as confirmed case of scrub typhus. So confirmed case, it includes detection of rickettsial DNA by PCR test. So if we have findings of PCR test where rickettsial DNA is detected, and for PCR test our sample can be either Ishar sample or it can be whole blood sample. Laboratory findings which are suggestive of scrub typhus, it includes leukopenia, it includes thrombocytopenia. Then there might be elevated level of hepatic enzymes, or we can say simply deranged liver function test. Then specimen that we can select is either blood or either Ishar. So these are the samples that are taken. Specific investigations that can be done for scrub typhus, it includes serological test, IgM and IgG ELISA, immunofluorescence assay, Will-Felix test. Most important test is Will-Felix test. Then for confirmation we can go for molecular diagnosis by PCR test, and lastly we can go for isolation of organisms. Will-Felix test, its titer 1:80 is suggestive of possible infection by scrub typhus. Then ELISA, IgM, IgG ELISA, this is the most sensitive test and this is most commonly done test. IgM antibody, it appears at the end of 1 week, and IgG antibody appears at the end of 2nd week. Then gold standard test which is done is immunofluorescence assay. So 4-fold rise in antibody titer is considered as diagnostic of scrub typhus. But cost of this test is more, or rather we can say this is expensive test. Then PCR test help in confirmation of diagnosis, and it should be done within first week or within 7 to 10 days. Last test what we can do is isolation of organisms. Isolation can be done in laboratory or it can be done by animal inoculation. Then one more index is find out, that is known as Chigger index, and Chigger index, it is average number of chiggers infesting a single host. On single host, how many average number of chiggers are present that we are supposed to find in environment. So if it is above critical value, which is 0.69, this indicates that we must initiate some vector control measures in the surroundings. After diagnosis, treatment is an important part. Regarding treatment, the drug of choice is tetracycline. Tetracycline 200 milligram. It is given daily, and it should be given for 1 week period.
Another drug that can be used in the treatment of scrub typhus is doxycycline.
In case of the rickettsia organisms showing resistance to doxycycline, the another drug which is used is rifampicin. It is 600 milligram which is given daily. Doxycycline, and second option is it's rifampicin in case of resistance. Tetracycline is another drug which can also be used in treatment. Vector control, regarding how to control mite and what insecticides are used, we had already discussed that. What we can do is application of insecticides to the ground. This includes mainly linden, chlordane, DDT and malathion and other insecticides. So dusting can be done or spraying can be done on the ground. And another important thing, we can clear all the vegetations where rats and mice they are residing.
Before proceeding further to see control measures of scrub typhus, let's see the details of the vector trombiculid mite. Mites are also known as chiggers. General appearance of mites resembles to the ticks. From public health standpoint, two mites are important. It includes trombiculid mite and itch mite. Trombiculid mites are spider-like arthropods, and they further includes two important species. It is Leptotrombidium deliens and Leptotrombidium akamushi. Here you can see images of these two species of trombiculid mites, that is Leptotrombidium deliens and Leptotrombidium akamushi. Life history of trombiculid mites consists of 4 stages. These are egg, larva, nymph and adult. Eggs are laid singly. Larva, it is pale orange in color and it has 3 pairs of legs. Nymph, it is brick red in color and it has 4 pairs of legs. Adult trombiculid mite has 4 pairs of legs. Entire lifespan of trombiculid mite is 6 months. In this slide, you can see all 4 stages of life history of trombiculid mites, that is egg, larva, nymph and adult stage. Let's see diseases transmitted by trombiculid mites. Trombiculid mites transmits scrub typhus and rickettsial pox. Scrub typhus, it is caused by Rickettsia susugamushi, and rickettsial pox, it is caused by Rickettsia acari. Control of trombiculid mites includes insecticidal control, environmental control and protection of workers. Insecticidal control, it includes dusting or spraying of insecticides. We can use insecticides like DDT, linden, chlordane, deldrine, malathion or toxaphene. Environmental control, it includes filling of cracks and crevices in the ground which are near houses or which are near buildings. Protection of workers, it includes use of protective clothing impregnated with an insect repellent. The best insect repellents are diethyl toluamide, benzyl benzoate and indalone.
Third important part is personal prophylaxis or personal protection. Here, most important protective measure is use of mite repellents. Mite repellents, the most important repellent is diethyl toluamide. This can be applied to skin surfaces or it can be applied to clothes also. And miticide chemicals can be used. So miticide chemical is benzyl benzoate. Benzyl benzoate is the miticidal chemical which is used for impregnation of clothes and blankets. So whatever clothes are used by persons or blankets used by persons, they should be impregnated with benzyl benzoate. What other things we can tell to people is use of protective clothing, preferably impregnated. Just now I said it, plus use of insect repellents. Yeah, one more instruction it should be given to people. They should not sit or they should not lie on bare grounds of grass. So where grass is present, generally we have habit of sitting directly, or some people even they enjoy resting. So in this grass, chiggers are likely to be present. Some suitable ground cover or ground sheet should be used, and then people should sit or lie down on the grass. For chemoprophylaxis, chloramphenicol or tetracycline is the drug which is used. And regarding its prevention, no vaccine is available for prevention of scrub typhus.
Let's revise what we discussed in this topic on scrub typhus. There are different rickettsial zoonoses which can occur in man. Out of these various rickettsial zoonoses, the most widespread disease is scrub typhus. How scrub typhus exists in nature? In nature, scrub typhus exists as zoonosis and it is present in certain species of trombiculid mite and small mammals, for example, field mice and rats. The distribution pattern of scrub typhus in different countries is endemic. Different countries where we can find scrub typhus in endemic pattern of distribution, it includes North Japan, Southeast Asia, Western Pacific Islands, Eastern Australia, China, South Central Russia, India and Sri Lanka. In endemic countries, scrub typhus it is mainly found in rural areas. And even cases of scrub typhus are reported from urban areas also. There is increased possibility of acquiring infection of scrub typhus in travelers, specifically those travelers who are visiting to rural areas of endemic countries. And majority of times these travelers they visit rural areas for various activities like camping, rafting or hiking. The causative agent of scrub typhus is Rickettsia sussugamushi, and there are different serological strains of Rickettsia sussugamushi. Important reservoir of infection for scrub typhus is mite. The name of the mite is trombiculid mite, and there are two important species which acts as a reservoir of infection. These species includes Leptotrombidium deliens and Leptotrombidium akamushi. The infection is maintained in nature transovarially from one generation of mite to the next generation of mite. In the soil, we can find nymphal stages and adult stages of trombiculid mite, and these stages they do not feed on vertebrate host. It is important to remember here that it is the larval stage, which is also known as chigger, which feeds on vertebrate host. When these chiggers or when these larvae they feed on the infected vertebrate hosts, they picks up the rickettsial organisms. To be specifically here, it is Rickettsia susugamushi, which is causative agent of scrub typhus. Thus, these are the larval stages of trombiculid mite, which are important reservoir of infection for scrub typhus. The same mites, that is trombiculid mites, acts as vector. So, scrub typhus, it is vector borne disease or it is arthropod borne disease. And now you know the name of the vector, it is trombiculid mite. There are two important vectors, Leptotrombidium deleans and Leptotrombidium akamushi. These vectors, that is trombiculid mites, they infect rodents as well as they can infect humans. How humans acquires infection? Man or humans acquires infection by bite of infected larval stage of trombiculid mites. We know the reservoir of infection is mites. From mites, Rickettsia susugamushi, they are transmitted through mites only to rats and mice. We said the vector trombiculid mite is responsible for transmitting Rickettsia susugamushi from mite to rats and mice. And again from rats and mice, Rickettsia susugamushi is transmitted to mite. So generally the natural cycle it is maintained between mites, rats, and the same trombiculid mites can bite to man or human and can produce scrub typhus in human beings. Don't forget, these are the larval stages or these are the chiggers which are involved in transmission of Rickettsia susugamushi from mites to humans. There is no person to person or man to man transmission. So, a case or cases of scrub typhus cannot transmit the causative agent, that is Rickettsia susugamushi, from them to another susceptible human host. Incubation period of scrub typhus is usually 10 days to 12 days, but it may vary from 6 days to 21 days. So 6 days to 21 days is the range of incubation period of scrub typhus. Clinical picture of scrub typhus resembles with epidemic typhus. Onset of disease is acute. The most important feature is fever. Fever is associated with chills, malaise, prostration. Another characteristic feature of scrub typhus that you can see is macular rash, and this rash appears around 5th day of the illness. Another important characteristic feature is lymphadenopathy, and lymphadenopathy is generalized. The duration of fever in untreated cases is prolonged, and in untreated cases fever may persist for the period of 3 weeks, and after 3 weeks fever in cases of scrub typhus resolves. Local manifestation of scrub typhus includes eschar. You can find eschar at the site of bite. So this is one of the typical feature is eschar at the site of bite. And what is eschar? It is punched out ulcer which is covered with blackened scab. Presence of eschars gives us indication about the location or the site of the bite by trombiculid mite. Diagnosis of scrub typhus can be done by various tests. On CBC, we can find lymphocytosis. Serological tests can be performed. Immunofluorescence test can be done for diagnosis, or even RT-PCR test can be done for diagnosis. But the most important test is the Will-Felix test, which comes strongly positive in cases of scrub typhus. I repeat, don't forget the name of Will-Felix test. Prevention and control of scrub typhus. As far as prevention is concerned, till date no vaccine is available for prevention of scrub typhus. So the most important thing is to control scrub typhus in community. Control measures includes early diagnosis and treatment, control of vector, and personal prophylaxis. Diagnosis can be done based on clinical presentation and laboratory diagnosis. And for treatment of scrub typhus, the drug of choice is tetracycline. However, for treatment, we can use other drugs like doxycycline, and in cases showing resistance to doxycycline, we can use rifampicin. So total 3 drugs can be used in the treatment. These includes tetracycline, doxycycline, and rifampicin. For controlling vector trombiculid mite, we can use different insecticides. The examples are DDT, chlordane, lindane, deldrine, malathion, etc. These insecticides, they can be applied by dusting or by spraying. The environmental control measures for controlling trombiculid mites includes filling the cracks and crevices, particularly in the houses or the buildings. The last control measure, it includes personal protection. For personal protection, protective clothing can be used. These clothing can be impregnated with insecticide repellents. Examples of insecticidal repellents that can be used for impregnation purpose, it includes indalone, diethyl toluamide, and benzyl benzoate. Out of these insecticides, that is indalone, diethyl toluamide, and benzyl benzoate, it has miticidal action. It means it can kill the trombiculid mites. In addition to impregnation of clothing, it is important to do impregnation of blankets. The mite repellent diethyl toluamide, it can be directly applied to the exposed skin surfaces. In addition to these control measures, health education should be given to high-risk people. It includes those people which are likely to get exposed to the mites or mite islands. These people should avoid sitting directly on the grounds where grass is present. As you know, in nature, the cycle it is maintained among mites and small mammals, that is field rats and mice. So, in addition to controlling the vector, it is essential to control these small mammals, that is rats and mice. For controlling rats, the most effective control measure is environmental sanitation, and the most effective measure is proper storage, collection, and disposal of garbage. In addition to this, attention should be paid to proper storage of foodstuffs, and cooked foodstuffs as well as uncooked foodstuffs should be stored appropriately. Rodenticides can be used for controlling the rodents or rats and mice. The rodenticides are of two types: single dose rodenticides and multiple dose rodenticides. The rodenticides which are most commonly used includes barium carbonate and zinc phosphide. For controlling rats and mice, fumigation can be done by using cyanogas. The additional benefit of this method is it also destroys the rat fleas. In addition to all these methods, for controlling domestic rats or for controlling commensal rats, we can use traps. There are special wonder traps which are developed in India. It's about scrub typhus. Thanks for watching this video.